Welcome, everybody. Like McKenna mentioned, my name is Carly. I'm coming to you from my mom's Airbnb here on Wolf Island, just outside of Kingston, Ontario. Welcome to this 45-minute rather gentle yoga practice. I want to remind you that this is your practice. So whatever it is that you need from the practice today, I urge you to seek that out above all else what I'm suggesting or what you think the practice should look like or what have you. Um, like McKenna mentioned, I'll be on the call afterwards if you have questions or need me for anything. If you leave your camera on, I'll assume that that means that you're okay with me giving you verbal assist. You're welcome to turn your cameras off. So let's get started. Go on, people. I can't, you'll lose me. You go ahead. So we're gonna start seated. If you find yourself comfortable onto a pillow or a blanket, and sit so that your hips are higher than your knees. So if you feel like you have to grip with your hands to keep yourself sitting up here without rolling back into your low back, shift a little side to side, maybe find a firmer source of support. And I want to start off just with feet together and knees open. While you're practicing in this position, see if you can draw the big toes towards each other. So that's just going to activate a little more to the inner thigh. Relax the toes. And we'll start circling a little bit here. So if you need a little extra support, you can always bring your hands behind you. And we're just going to circle the spine on top of the hips and then change directions and circle the other way. Coming up to a tall sit now, visualize your spine, each individual vertebra, and starting with the very top of your neck, we're going to tilt the chin to chest and kind of roll yourself forward one vertebra at a time. So coming forward through behind your heart, starting to hinge forward towards your feet as you move into your low back, moving as far as you can, keeping within a sensation that feels like maybe a 6 or a 7 out of 10. So nothing too intense. And then come back from your tail. So rocking back a little bit, rolling back up to a neutral spine. Really try to carve out behind the belly one vertebra at a time until you find yourself back up in a tall seated shape. We'll do that one more time. So chin to chest, rolling down. Vertebrae by vertebrae, really trying to isolate the movements and reach each vertebra one after the next. And then back up again. Take your time. So from here, we're going to extend the right leg out, and I'll encourage you to move the right leg out only so far that maybe you feel a tiny bit of a sensation in the inner thigh, but nothing too intense. At the same time, tuck your left foot a little closer to your body. And if you're feeling any strain behind your right knee or under into your left hip, bring a little bit of support beneath your knees as well here, especially if you found yourself sitting quite high up. It's a good idea to support behind your knees. Now imagine your tail on a wall behind you. Try to line up your heart to that same imaginary wall, maybe even the back of the head to that wall. Reach your right arm out to also be on this imaginary wall. And we're going to hinge over towards your extended leg. So over to the right. You could let your left arm come up, or it might be behind your back. Take a little check to make sure the head, both shoulders, and the sacrum are on this imaginary wall. And then press a little bit down through your left side to ground that left side in towards the floor. Make sure you're engaging the left side of your neck so your head isn't dropping down to the floor. And then we're going to come back up to seated, switch legs to the other side. Just starting to wake up the body here on this imaginary wall. Take your left arm, extend it out, reach a little bit to the left. Your right arm could come up. It could be just weightless on the head. It could be behind your back or on your hip, whatever feels comfortable for you. Do a little check in at the back of the head, both sides of your seat, and both shoulders are on your imaginary wall. And then push a little bit down through your right seat to make sure that you're grounded here on the right side. Try to breathe into both sides of your body. And when you're ready, come all the way back up to center. And from here, we'll transition around to hands and knees. So take your time as you transition to this shape. And it isn't often outside of the yoga space that we come to bear weight on the wrists. So take a few moments to circle or rock around your wrist, changing where your wrists are. So turn the palms towards each other, or turn the fingers towards each other, turn them away from each other. Sort of moving into that joint in as many different ways as you can think of. Maybe even turn the palm up towards the ceiling. And you can bring your seat closer to your feet to control how much weight is bared down on the palms themselves, or on the wrists themselves rather. And then find yourself in what feels like a comfortable tabletop shape. Bring a little more awareness and grounding through the pinky toe edges of your feet on the floor. And then push the floor away from you slightly. So I want you to imagine as though there's a second source of gravity up on the ceiling. So as opposed to letting all of your weight hang down into the joints here, there's a equal force to gravity pulling you upwards. Maybe a little bit of external rotation of your arms. So feel like you're trying to wrap your inner arm around your outer arm. And then we're going to find that same progression through the spine, but in your cat-cow shape. So lift your tail towards the ceiling and let that arch progressively move through the spine, vertebrae by vertebrae, until you find your heart opening to the front of the room. And then keep your chest broad in this way. Start way down in your tail. Tuck the tail down. Really try to move through the low back, through the mid back, behind your heart. And finally, let your head hang like you're trying to look towards your own belly. And then keep this arch shape. We're going to do the same thing the other way. Lift the tail and vertebra by vertebra, progressively move through your back. Trying to get each individual joint to move before the next. And here we're breaking up habitual movement patterns. Go ahead and switch the other way. Trying to train the brain to connect to all of these deep muscles. One more time. And then come back to your tabletop shape. And from your tabletop shape, I'll invite you to come to lie onto the belly. So you can use props underneath your body in the same way that we do when we're on our back. I'll just stay lifted so on my elbows so that you can hear me. But I'll invite you to come all the way down, maybe palm on top of palm under your forehead, or arms relaxed down by your sides. Create a little bit of space in the front of the body. Curl your toes under. With your left leg, lift your knees up, lift your thigh up, and push back through the heel to create a little bit of space in the front of your left hip, and then let your foot curl, turn back down. Same thing on the other side. Lift the knee, thigh, push back a little through the heel, and then rest the leg down. Without really moving your forehead from the floor, take your hands down by your sides. We're going to sort of slide forward and back along the floor. So lift your head just slightly so that your nose is almost touching the mat. With your hands under your shoulders, pull back on your hands like you were going to slide forward or slither forward. And then let that relax and relax your forehead back to the mat. Notice your breath rising and falling. See if you can feel the back of your body, the pelvic floor, the front of your body. And in this pose of rest, unclench your seat. Now preparing once again, slide the hands under your shoulders, touch your nose just barely grazing off the mat. Engage your seat, push your pubic bone down into the floor. And then with your hands, you're going to pull on the hands like you were going to slide yourself forward. And then let that relax once again. You could turn onto one temple or rest your forehead to the mat. Find breath. Unclench your seat. One more time, push down through the feet and the pelvis. Engage the legs so you're pushing through the tops of the feet as well. Pull back and then come up onto fingertips. Lift by engaging the back muscles to lift your chest and stretch the belly, coming back down. So if you're tempted to lift by pushing your hands, just let the hands float where they are, or really focus on pulling the hands back like you're going to drag forward. Engage the back of the body to stretch through the belly, stretch through the hips, come back down. If you're feeling this as a sensation in your low back or as a pinching, think of really using the legs like leverage. One more time to lift up. And as you come back down, we're going to roll now over onto the side. So I'm going to roll on my right side, bringing something underneath your head so that your head isn't hanging. Maybe a pillow. Where's my pillow? Or a couple of folded blankets. Finding yourself comfortably on the side. If you can, align your feet, your seat, your heart, and your head all on the same imaginary wall. So my knees are bent, feet, seat, head, heart, all against this imaginary wall. We're going to bring that left arm or your top arm straight up to the ceiling. Straighten the arm, lock it, and let yourself start to do little circles here. And as you make these circles, notice how the movement is coming from the arm bone, circling in the shoulder joint. So let's experiment with how high can you reach? Reaching up like you're trying to reach for something a couple of inches out of reach. Reaching forward without rolling forwards. Keep your top shoulder in line with your bottom shoulder. Let the shoulder blade move away from your spine. Reaching down like you're carrying heavy groceries. Turn your palm and then circle behind you, bringing the pinky finger as close to your body as you can. Making these big circles. If your space doesn't provide for a straight arm, you can have your hand on the elbow and still circle in the same way, but really be conscious you're not rocking forward and rocking back as you explore. A couple more circles, and then you can let the arm rest. Maybe it rests on your body, maybe up to the sky, letting the arm kind of settle down into the shoulder. Some people like to have the arm reaching overhead. If you're going to do that, I suggest bringing something underneath your hand so that it's not just floating in space. Find something that works for you. And then keeping yourself again on that imaginary wall, we're going to take your top knee and bend it in towards your chest. Now rotate so that the shin points towards the ceiling, but be careful your top hip isn't floating back. Then flip that leg over so now your foot is pointing to the ceiling. Flip again, your shin is pointing to the ceiling. Whoops, I rocked. Foot is pointing to the ceiling. Shin is pointing to the ceiling. Maybe 2 more times. Make sure you're breathing here, and the sensation is only about a 6 or 7 out of 10. Take a break when you need to. And then relax the leg back down to where you started. Take a breath or two. If you're feeling any pulling in the outer part of your hip, you could bring a blanket between your knees and your thighs. From here, you're going to extend your bottom arm right out in front of you. I need to move my mugs here. Look out, mugs. Place your palm on top of palm or palm on top of wrist and reach your top leg so it's floating. So my left leg's on top. It's just going to float on top of my bottom leg. I'm going to so 2 things simultaneously. I'm going to slide my left arm up across my heart and open my heart to the ceiling. At the same time, I'm going to kick my left leg out in front of me. So I come to this full body twist and then slide the hand across my heart, come back to where I started. Slide across the heart. My heart opens to the ceiling. My arms are open wide, and I'm going to kick my top leg out towards the right to counter stretch. And back on the side. I'm just going to do that one more time. Big, wide stretch. And then back onto your side. Take a breath or two here. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to turn onto the other side. So just pausing to prepare yourself for that movement and also noticing in this special time between the 2 sides. Notice the difference in how you're feeling on your left side versus your right side. Not just in physical sensation, but where is breath able to move on one side versus the other? Is there a sense of warmth more on one side than the other? When you feel ready, slowly taking yourself over to the other side. I'm going to do a big flip around, but you could just turn over. As you set yourself up, first step is having a blanket or a pillow that's about the same distance as your ear to your shoulder. Secondly, you want to try to align yourself with your knees bent so that it's feet, seat, heart, head, all on this imaginary wall. My top shoulder is right on top of my bottom shoulder, top hip on top of bottom hip. Bring your, if you're feeling any strain in your hips, you can bring a blanket underneath or between your knees, thighs, calves, ankles, and reach your top arm towards the ceiling. With that straight locked arm, we're going to start with small circles and then let those circles get bigger and bigger. Keep the arms straight, elbow locked, so the movement's really concentrated to the joint. As you reach up above your head, really take that reach. Forward in front of you, the shoulder blade moves away from the spine. Down, depressing like you're carrying heavy groceries. Then flip your palm as you come behind you and really slide the arm as close to your spine as you can. Feel free to change directions if you'd like. And then as you feel ready, come back to a neutral starting place. Maybe your arm is reaching to the ceiling. Maybe it's resting on your body. Maybe it's reaching overhead, but your hands settled down onto something. With your top leg, bring that knee in towards your chest, like you're going to squeeze it to your chest. And then rotate rather, so that the calf or the shin is pointing to the ceiling. Make sure your top seat is still on top of your bottom seat, that you're not leaning back. Shin is pointing to the ceiling, rotate, foot points to the ceiling. So my knee moves out, my knee moves in. I'm going to try and keep the leg as high as I can while keeping this bend. Keep my seat stacked on top of the bottom, or my hips stacked on top of the bottom hip, and rotate as far as you can in one direction and as far as you can in the other. Maybe 2 more times. And then let your leg relax. Take a breath or 2. When you feel ready, we're going to extend that leg so that it's straight and hovering. My right hand or my top hand stacks on top of my bottom arm. 2 things at the same time. My hand slides up my arm, across my chest, wide open, spacious stretch, and the top leg kicks out to my right or away from the arm, and then back where we started. Again, opening up, kicking the leg out. So we've got this full body twist. Coming back to where we started, maybe one more time as you feel ready. And then once you're done that, take a moment or 2 on the side. Just find ease. Reconnect with your breath. Realign your perspective with whatever your intention is for taking class today. And if it's the first time that you're thinking of that question, considering what goal or vision you have in spending this time together this morning. What are you seeking? Maybe in this class, maybe in general in your life. And then as you feel ready, I'll invite you to slowly transition yourself all the way back to, or all the way up rather, to standing. So it's a big transition here from the floor to standing. Take your time. Take some moments and seated first if you need before you come up to stand. And once you're there, move yourself around a little bit. Maybe walk around your space, maybe jump or bounce or dance or sway. Let there be a bit of dynamic movement. Connecting through the feet, connecting through the legs, connecting to the hips. And then when you feel ready, we'll come to meet on our mats. There we go. Coming to stand in a way that makes you feel strong and stable. Hands can be hanging down. You'd have your hands on your waist. You could bring your hands together at your heart. Now, for a moment, connect what's happening in this weight balance of your legs with what happened when we were in table with our hands. And see if you can externally rotate your legs without moving your feet. So if I were going to turn my feet into turn my feet out into like a big V shape or dancer's first position, what muscles would you use to turn your feet out in that way? So keep your feet facing forward, but see if you can engage the inner thigh wrapping around the outer thigh. Now, from there, take an inhale breath. And as you exhale, we're going to shift onto one foot. So I'm just going to slide my back leg in a straight position just behind me so the toes are on the floor. Maybe you're going to stay here, sort of hovering and lowering. If you'd like, keeping the spine straight, we're just going to move over the right hip socket. So we're going to hinge forward, and you can use a chair or a piece of furniture around you to help you find balance as you hinge. It's more important that you move down and up in a controlled way than feeling wobbly. Go ahead and find a piece of furniture to support you. I'll show you one way that you can use just a simple chair in front of you. And as you find this dip, you can hold on to the chair to help support. So we're gonna do one leg, then the other. So take a moment to realign in your center. You only need to use the chair as much as you need to use it. So your hands can rest onto it, but that doesn't mean you need to push down onto it unless you start to feel imbalanced. Keeping your left leg engaged in this way, bring your right leg back and then hinge over top of this left hip. So keep driving your right front hip down towards the floor as you hinge down and up. You don't have to move very far, but I want you to imagine like there's an owl on the back of your heel that's keeping you straight all the way to the top of your head. Make sure you're breathing and that this effort is only about a 6 or a 7 out of 10. When it becomes more than that, pause into your Tadasana, your mountain pose, reconnect to your sense of strength, to the ease in the upper body, the support from the lower body. After you've done this for a couple more breaths, we're going to come back to center. And in your center pose, find once again your Tadasana, your mountain pose. And from here, we're going to bend the knees straight down, straight up. Just a simple little bend down and up. As you bend your knees, look forward to make sure the knees are moving over the second or the third toe so they're not knocking out or in. And then if you're able to, the next time you're bent forward, make a little circle with those knees as you come up. So we're going to bend straight forward and then circle the other way, just like you're drawing a little circle with the knees. One way and the other. If this is feeling somewhat doable, you might choose to balance and take the same exercise. Now you're asking one leg to bear the whole load of the body, so it's a little challenging. Make sure you're breathing, and whichever option you choose is supporting you at about a 6 out of 10. Switch to the other side if you're doing one leg. This side's a little harder for me. And then stepping down, coming back to your mountain pose, and we'll make some figure 8 shapes with the hips. So sliding almost like you're drawing a figure 8. Try to hit all of those corners, all of those edges. And then the other direction, swoop. Now you're drawing a backwards figure 8, swoop. Why? Because I feel like when you move and change directions, we have a tendency, or without changing directions, we have a tendency to move in the same way. And then all of a sudden we change directions and we find little areas we're maybe neglecting. After you've done that, we're going to come back to lie onto the back, knees bent, feet to the mat. Take your time to get there. It's the last transition we'll make so you can get cozy on your back, settled in with knees bent, feet to the mat. Take your feet out a little bit wider, maybe about the edges of your mat or so, and let them both sort of move over to one side, move over to the other. So remember, your feet don't have to be close to your seat as you find this movement. In fact, I would encourage you to do a couple rounds and then move your feet a little. Maybe they move closer together, maybe they move closer to your seat. Once you've done exploring those gentle twists, come back to where you started and center and maybe introduce a little bit of lymphatic flush. So here in the example that I'm doing, I'm relaxed completely through my body so that this vibration or reverberation can move all the way through my body. And if I were to slow it down and really break it down, in essence, my seat is relaxed, my muscles and my legs are relaxed. I'm just giving ever so gently a push with my feet and then letting that push go. And it creates this kind of gentle bounce, 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 like you're jumping on a mini trampoline. Take in this little lymphatic flush if you choose to while we take a few full breaths. So breathing the full capacity of your front, side, and back ribs. Filling up to feel a little bit of pressure on the pelvic floor. Maybe about 5 more seconds. And then coming back to a position of stillness. You could have your hands resting on your body. They could be palms turned up or palms down, whatever feels comfortable for you. Take a moment or two to find breath. Notice how you feel after you've been here for a couple of breaths. If they aren't already, bend the knees, feet to the mat. Notice which part of your back is resting on your sacrum. So you've got your left side of your seat, the right side of your seat, and just above the seat, this flat area that you can settle in the middle. Without bringing your feet in together to touch, let both legs rotate away from each other and back towards each other. And see if you can do this without changing the shape of your low back at all. So as I move out, I'm going to notice which leg feels like it's moving faster and try to bring my attention to the other leg. Out and in, out and in. Couple more rounds. And then coming back to stillness. If you don't have any sciatica issues, you could take your knees or thighs towards each other and walk your feet out wide. Otherwise, you're welcome to cross the legs, extend them long. As you breathe here, try to bring to mind that word that you thought of earlier that you're trying to cultivate more of in your life. As you continue to rest here, if it's more comfortable for you to lie on your side, to extend your legs long. to lie on your belly, please go ahead and do so. Notice your body resting here, passively being breathed. Notice yourself breathing here and continue to rest in a comfortable position. Continue with your eyes closed if you'd like. Imagine in front of you a huge clock. On that face of the clock, now bring your eyeballs all the way up to 12 o'clock. So it's almost like the eyes are looking back into your head. And then 1 o'clock, way up to the right. 2 o'clock. 3 o'clock, all the way over to the right. Slightly down for 4, 5, straight down at 6, starting to move left for 7, 8, 9, continuing to move around the clock all the way to the left, up, back to center where you started, and then just one more time, changing positions and rotating all the way back around. Visualize the room around you, the floor below you, the ceiling above you, and all 4 walls around you. And then visualize yourself laying here just as you're feeling in this moment. In a moment or two, I'm going to ask you to wrap up our class together by finding a different pose to lie in. So if you're on your back, maybe you want to come to your belly. If you're seated, you can simply switch hands to heart or change to how you're holding your hands. Sort of starting to move and awaken your body now, as though you want to leave one part lingering in the practice while the other makes its way back into the world. And just pause once you've reached that other position, whether that's your back or your side or what have you. Take notice how you're feeling physically. Your level of energy, how fast or how slow your thoughts are coming. And the expansiveness with which air seems to move through your body. And as you feel ready, slowly making your way to seated, where we can close our class together, maybe seated back onto those blankets or pillows or what have you. Grounding yourself here. You're welcome to join me with your palms facing up or down, or your hands together at your heart. Taking a moment here to recognize perhaps a feeling of gratitude to the people upon whose land we practice and live. Gratitude to the lineage of yoga and the teachers that have come before us and brought this practice down to us. Maybe extending that gratitude to the other people who practiced with you. And at the same time, perhaps allow for their gratitude to wash over you. Lastly, just for a moment, perhaps recognizing gratitude to yourself for having come to this practice and move together. I want to take a moment at the end of class here to say thank you to all of you for joining me. Remind you that once again, my name is Carly. I'll be on the line for the next 5 minutes or so if you have questions or comments, anything you want to share. So take your time, and hope to see you again next week.